The prairie has a way of remembering what men try to forget, and some nights it whispers those memories back in the voice of the wind, thin, sharp, and merciless as barbed wire. That night, as the moon slipped low and the first teeth of winter cut through the land, Silas Boone rode home earlier than planned. His horse's breath steamed in the dark, hooves drumming a hollow rhythm over frozen earth. Each creak of saddle leather reminded him of years gone wrong, years he could not gather back with rope or reins. He told himself he was only passing through, only needing warmth and a place to water his mare. But deep in his chest, buried under dust, pride, and the stink of whiskey, was a different truth. He missed his girls, missed their small laughter, the clumsy songs they used to sing under Evelyn's window. He had been a father once, a husband too, though both titles had long since slipped through his calloused hands. And yet, something stronger than shame pulled him that night. Call it instinct, call it providence. Some men might even call it love. The Boone homestead rose from the frost like a shadow of memory. Silas slowed his mare, watching the windows from the tree line. No lamplight glowed there, only silence, the kind that feels like it is listening. As he sat in the saddle, ghosts crept in. He saw in his mind's eye Clara, 12 now, though he still thought of her as the child who braided wildflowers into his hair. And Rosalie, 9, all freckles and stubborn questions. He had left them too many times with promises that Pop'll be back soon, only to vanish down the cattle trails for seasons at a stretch. And then there was Evelyn, his ex-wife. He used to call her his North Star. Now she belonged to another's keeping, or perhaps not belonged. Evelyn was too proud a woman for that. But she had remarried for stability. To Margaret Hale, a stepmother the town praised for her piety, her fine church dresses, her sharp tongue that cut as clean as any knife. Silas clenched the reins tighter. He had no right to knock on that door, no right to stir old pain, but his heart refused the logic of rights. Something pressed him forward, slow and unsteady, like a man sleepwalking into his fate. The wind shifted, carrying with it a sound that snapped him awake. Not the howl of coyote, not the moan of trees, a cry. Thin, strangled, human. Silas swung out of the saddle, boots crunching on frost. The sound came again, muffled from beyond the fence line. His pulse thudded in his ears as he moved closer. And then he saw them. There, lashed to the post like livestock, were 3 figures. Rope cut into pale wrists, dresses stiff with ice, eyes wide and wet with terror. His knees nearly buckled. Evelyn, Clara, Rosalie, bound in the winter dark, lips trembling blue, their breaths shallow clouds. Evelyn's head lifted at the sound of his steps, her eyes swimming with both shame and recognition. Silas, she croaked, voice weak as broken reeds. Clara's whisper shivered through the night. Papa! She locked us out! Silas stumbled forward, hands shaking as he clawed at the knots. The ropes burned his fingers, but he hardly felt it. He freed Evelyn first. She was stiff, nearly collapsed against him. Then his daughters, gathering them to his chest as if he could warm them with nothing but his heartbeat. The shame hit him like a hammer. He had abandoned them once, but tonight he had returned early. Tonight, fate had dealt him this bitter chance at redemption. He pulled his coat from his back, wrapping Clara and Rosalie, holding them tight as tears carved hot rivers down his face. Easy now, darlings. Papa's here, Silas murmured, his voice rough, like gravel catching on the edge of a hymn. Clara buried her face in his chest, her sobs silent but shaking. Rosalie clung to his arm so hard he thought she might never let go. Evelyn, shivering, pressed her palm to the fence post for balance, unable to meet his gaze. He guided them toward the cabin, his arms more fortress than man. The girls' breaths rattled against him, their skin cold as stone. Inside, the fire glowed, but it was not the warmth of home. It was a fire that burned beneath the eyes of Margaret Hale. Margaret stood rigid before the hearth, her face shadowed by firelight. A Bible lay open on the table, its pages fluttering in the draft. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice was iron, clipped, sharp enough to cut through the shivers of the children. Silas placed the girls near the fire, wrapped them in blankets. His every move was slow, deliberate. Rage swirled inside him like a storm, but he chained it down with silence. You left them in the cold, he said, voice low, dangerous. Margaret's lips tightened. They disobeyed. The good book teaches correction. A night's repentance under God's sky won't kill them. Silas stepped forward. It near did. Margaret's composure cracked, her eyes flashing. You think this is your home still? You think Evelyn doesn't dream of you when she stares out that window? You think the town hasn't whispered that I'm just a placeholder for the ghost of Silas Boone? The words struck like whips. Evelyn flinched but lifted her chin. Her voice trembled, yet carried the old fire Silas remembered. Margaret, I married you for safety. But tonight you showed me the cost. My children are not your penance. They are flesh and blood, and they deserve love, not punishment. Margaret's face hardened, her pride cracking into fury. You'll regret siding against me. But Silas didn't raise his fists. He didn't shout. He simply stood, tall and still, his presence more immovable than any threat. Leave, he said. One word, heavy as judgment. The firelight danced against Margaret's face. For a moment, defiance flickered in her eyes. Then, with a sharp turn, she snatched her shawl, shoved open the door, and vanished into the night. Her boots crunched across the frost, swallowed by the prairie's endless dark. The silence she left behind was heavier than her presence. The girls clung to Silas, warmth slowly returning to their limbs. Evelyn sat across from him, her hands trembling as she tried to gather herself. For a long time, neither spoke. The fire crackled, the storm outside beat against the walls. Finally, Clara's small voice broke the quiet. Papa, are you staying this time? Silas's throat closed. He wanted to promise, but promises had been his greatest failure. He bowed his head, hat twisting in his hands. Words failed him, but Evelyn's eyes watched closely. And for the first time in years, she saw not the reckless drifter who left, but the man who had come back when it mattered most. She leaned forward, brushing frost from his temple with a trembling hand. It was not a declaration, not a vow, but a gesture of grace, and it steadied him more than any oath could. The family huddled close as the hours passed. Clara drifted to sleep in Silas's lap. Rosalie curled against Evelyn's side. The storm outside howled with fury, yet inside the cabin warmth bloomed, fragile, but real. Silas watched the fire, his arms heavy with the weight of his daughters. Redemption, he realized, didn't ride in on grand gestures. It was found in the quiet acts, a rope untied, a coat given, a lullaby hummed against the dark. Evelyn leaned her head lightly against his shoulder, her breath steady, her eyes closed. For the first time in years, the Boone homestead felt like home. And if you've read this far, friend, let me tell you plain. Men like Silas Boone walk among us still. Men who think they've lost their chance, who believe the road behind them is too burned to walk back. But hear me, love doesn't ask for perfection. It asks only for presence. A man can ride long and far from his mistakes, but sooner or later the trail bends home. And if he comes back with open hands, with a heart ready to stay, well, sometimes the fire is still waiting.